And hello and welcome to Got Clutter, Get Organized, the conversation. I am excited because, of course, I got my friend Christy Lingo. She's returning. But, of course, as you know, this month it's all about breast cancer awareness. And I wanted to bring Christy on to share with her story of how not only the diagnosis, treatment, but also how she navigated. And it's all a part of really us looking at our lives. So, Christy, thank you so much for joining me again. I'm so excited about the conversation.
Janet, I would talk to you about any and every topic. I just love being able to chat with you, but I'm especially excited to talk about this not because of the topic, but because I feel like hearing from breast cancer survivors is really important, whether you have been diagnosed, whether you are a survivor, or whether you know somebody who's going through treatment, because I feel like I definitely had a completely different perspective on what a breast cancer treatment regimen or what breast cancer was like before I had my diagnosis. So, yeah, I think this is really great.
So I would love for you to start with really, the diagnosis, but also take us on that journey because Christy, you come to us as a coach, businesswoman, wife, mother, community, and just how, you really like navigated all that stuff. So I wanted to share that with those watching and listening as well, but share your story.
Yeah. To be honest, like I always would have thought of myself as like healthy, right? I'll use air quotes. I had been a vegetarian on and off for I don't know, probably 16 years at the I was diagnosed at 44. So of the time of my life at that maybe a third of my life I had been a vegetarian, and actually the 2 years previous I had been eating mostly vegan at that point in time. I was the girl who always bought the all natural beauty products. I didn't have nonstick cookware in my house. I used all natural cleaning products, like all of those kinds of things that you would sort of associate with somebody that was healthy. And I really was good about going and getting my annual checkups. And when I turned 40, my doctor gave me the slip and said, go schedule your mammogram. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. And then I went in at 41 and she said, you really need to get that mammogram. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. Well, then we get into the COVID times. And for a while, unless you had a reason, you couldn't get an appointment for the mammogram. So when I go in, it's another 2 years, 42, 43 roll by. My doctor's like, you really need to get in and get a mammogram. We need to get a baseline for you. So finally, when I go in at 44, she says to me, when you walk out of this office today, sit in your car, call this number, and get your mammogram scheduled so that next year when you come in, you can say to me, I did it. Thank you. I'm in the system. Now they're calling me. And so I did exactly what she did, because occasionally I do listen to people when they tell me what to do. And so I went, and this was at the end of September. If I remember right, it was September 27th. I went in for my first mammogram. It was a really nice experience. I live near Ohio State University in Columbus. And so they have a really great, the James Cancer Hospital. They just treat you really well. It was a really easy procedure. I was like, yeah, nothing to it. 2 days later, I get a call that they had some dense tissue. They wanted to check it out again. Since it was my first mammogram, it probably wasn't anything to be worried about, but they just wanted to be sure since it was my first mammogram. And so they did what's called a contrast mammogram, which is where they put some ink into your veins. And basically, if something is potentially a cancerous tumor, it will uptake. I can't remember if it takes the dye and the other stuff
Mhm.
doesn't, or vice versa. Whatever it is, somehow it's able to highlight if what they're seeing is just tissue or if it is a tumor. And there were at least 5 spots that they were concerned about after that. And so then that like bullet train left the station. 2 days later, I had a biopsy. 4 days later, they called me and told me that 3 of the biopsies had come back positive for HER2 positive, triple HER2 positive breast cancer. And to be honest, like it, it was such a whirlwind from like that moment, that phone call. I was sitting right in this chair when the call came through, and that was on October 12th. And by November 9th, I had started my chemotherapy. Like they were not messing around at all. And it just became this okay, guess I better get everything together, because here we go. This train is leaving the station.
Wow. And it's amazing because as you were saying that, then I remember back when I would see you on social media and then all of a sudden you weren't there. And I was like, oh, you know what? She's probably off, focusing on the kids, focusing on, family stuff. So just hearing this. So, as someone who has ADHD,
Hmm.
how did that play in any role in regards to your emotional or
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that us ADHDers, we kind of thrive with stress. There is something about, I don't want to say that anxiety is a good thing, but so for instance, I knew I had that deadline of November 9th because that was the day that I was starting chemotherapy. So I knew that I had to do A, B, C, D, E. Like I sat down, made a checklist. There was something about that deadline. There was something about knowing what was coming, or at least having an idea of what was coming, that really sort of like told my brain, like, okay, we got to lock and load, like we have to really be focused and get these things done, because I knew that once I started chemotherapy, the way that it was explained to me was, after the first one you'll probably feel bad, after the second one you'll feel a little worse, as it continues to progress, it's sort of like you start at a level and then you never quite get back to that level, and then you never quite get back to that level, and so each time you're feeling more tired, you're feeling more sick, you're feeling more lethargic, all those kinds of things. And so knowing all of this information, I think, really caused me to zero in, prioritize what I needed to do, focus on getting the most important things done, which, as you noticed, was not social media at that point in time.
hmm
Also, it from the social media standpoint, it's kind of a weird thing, at least for me, to just sort of like put out there in the world, because it was so personal. Like I honestly, I don't mind talking about it, but I couldn't wrap my brain around the like right way to present it to people until I had a better grasp on it. But yeah, I just really feel like because of the stress of the situation, I just was able to really focus in, prioritize what was absolutely the utmost important, and just focus on that to get myself to the next space.
So how did, because sometimes as women we like to do everything. So how did, family, friends, how did that play in your role of your recovery?
Yes, and I love the way you said that, because you're so right. We have this sort of like inborn thing in us, I feel like, that is like we have to do all the things all the time. And I realized right away that that was not going to be possible for me. Um and luckily, I don't have any. I have a brother that lives here in town, but I don't. My parents don't live in town. My other siblings don't live in town. But I have a really great community of mom sisters that are in my neighborhood. And the minute they heard that things were going on, they just like got into action. And I think that was one of the first lessons that I learned, was, as somebody who always felt like, no, I don't need your help. No, I got this. No, I can handle it. I got it. I just had to like, my friend Jessica basically looked me in the eye and was like, listen, you might have it right now, but in 2 months you're not going to have it. So just let us help you. And in a nice way. But, and I'm so glad I did, because that really was at first a pill for me to swallow, because I don't know if I thought there was some sort of medal if I didn't take help at the end of this. I don't know my resistance was, but it was amazing. They just came together. They took care of making sure that we had meals. They took care of making sure that I had somebody with me at home after I had my chemotherapy or after I had my surgery, while my husband was working. Because like, he would have loved to have taken time off to take care of me, but let's just face the fact that that's not the country we live in. We don't have those kind of resources, and financially he couldn't have taken all that time off to be with me. So they arranged to come and sit with me and make sure I had lunch. They took up donations to get me a cleaning lady, so every 2 weeks somebody would come and clean the house, because, to be honest, I wasn't even prepared for how exhausted I was during, chemo, and I'm sure anybody, like, listening to me right now is I always have a lot of energy. My mom has the flight of the bumblebee as her ringtone when I call because I've always just been really energetic. There would be days when I would basically not leave my couch when I was going through chemo because it was so hard on my body. So just having those people there to make sure that our house stayed in order, making sure that our family was fed, and making sure that my kids' lives stayed as normal as possible, because that's what I told my husband. I was like, the biggest thing that I want, because at the time I was diagnosed, they were 8 and 10. So they were young, and I didn't want them to be scared, and I
Mhm.
didn't want their lives to be too disrupted. And so I was like, whatever needs to happen, whether that is outside help, whether that is outside help helping me so my husband can be for the kids, that's what we wanted to do, because I wanted it to be a blip for them. I didn't want them to be scared.
Mm. So has all of this experience, has it changed like maybe your perspectives on life as well as your priorities?
Oh, 100%. I think that, as I was saying earlier, I always thought of myself as being healthy and things like that. And then I realized that there were a lot of things in my life that I was doing that maybe wouldn't be considered healthy. And one thing in particular was my mental health, like really not focusing in on um my ADHD, and taking care of it in a healthy way. Treating my anxiety symptoms that I was having, not sleeping enough. That was a huge thing that, I was like, oh, I only need like 4 or 5 hours a night of sleep. No, nope. Now I am like, if I get less than 6, I make sure I have time for a nap the next day, kind of thing. And I think that um uh, another thing that really helped me mentally get through the chemo and the surgery and the other treatment that I had to have, was gratitude. Like that, almost immediately I started a gratitude journal and a gratitude practice, which I had been doing off and on for several years, but I really honed in on gratitude. And, I made sure that if somebody came to the house, if somebody made us a meal, I wrote a thank you note, not because I felt obligated to, but because it was such a check on how blessed I was. And I know it sounds crazy that, like, that is my reaction to cancer, but I honestly believe that having that gratitude and focusing in on how abundant my life was is the reason I was able to come out on the other side with a smile on my face and a song in my heart, and really just kind of like jump right back into my life, like it was just like a little blip.
And it's just so nice how you were able to really like let go. It's like, okay, this is where I am. I need to really focus on myself and my recovery. And I'm just going to let go of things and let other people come in and help me.
Yeah.
And a lot of that sometimes for us, it has to do with, well, they're not going to do it like me. But sometimes it gets to the point where you have to say, you know what? It's getting done.
Exactly, exactly. And that, what's interesting is, back in my professional organizer days, I would have that talk with moms a lot, if we're in a toy room or in a kitchen and they're like, I don't like the way they load the dishwasher. Or, they didn't put the Barbies back with the Barbies and the Hot Wheels back with the Hot Wheels. And I'm like, let's focus on getting it done first, and then let's focus on getting it done the way we want it. And I think that that is a really important lesson, and I was glad that I was kind of able to let that go. Like, yeah, maybe the food that was being prepared wasn't exactly the way that I would have done it, but God, that's so amazing that somebody took the time and spent their money and brought it to our house and was so giving. So then that gratitude comes back into, I mean, it just was really the fuel for us the entire time, was that gratitude that, like, yes, it's not perfect, yes, this isn't ideal, but gosh, are we so lucky? We live in a city where I have a world-class breast cancer hospital, specifically, not even just the cancer hospital. We have a breast cancer center here that is world renowned. How grateful am I to be living where I am living? My whole life I've talked about how I can't wait to get out of Ohio. And here I am. It ended up being life-saving for me.
And it's so interesting because when you were talking about, how people were bringing food and everything, it brought me back to and I may have shared this with you, when I had to have my hysterectomy. And my girlfriend moved in, which that's just a whole nother story.
Mhm.
But I still remember when she would make meals for me and she would set the table. she would always use the good china. Now, something I wouldn't use, and you know what, Christy? I let it go. It's like, you know what? First of all, I don't have the energy to do anything. She's here taking off her time and cooking for me, setting the table, doing the dishes, doing this. She's like, you know what? I got to let this go. So you're right. Sometimes you just got to kind of let stuff go.
Well, and I love that too because it using the good dishes feels like a celebration. And, even though again, it's a trying time in your life, like what better time to focus on what you do have and be able to celebrate the fact that you are still here because, with both of us, whatever was happening, it could have ended much differently. And there
Mhm.
are a lot of people, and I am very much aware of that, of how lucky I am that it was caught, even though it was a little later than it could have been. It was caught early, that I did live in a place where I could get the treatment that I needed. And so celebrating, I think, those little moments, especially when you're going through a trying time, really does help you to change your perspective and stay focused on the positive and keep that attitude all the way through.
And it's so true. And I was thinking about my food fairies, Christy. It was like every time one of them would come over just to check on me, and I'd go in my freezer and there would be all these little meals. It was like, yes, I love this. I truly love this.
Yeah.
So, Christy, what message of hope or inspiration would you like to share, maybe with somebody who is maybe just currently battling breast cancer?
Yeah. So this is hard because everyone kind of starts at a different place, right? I started from a positive place. So I don't want to make it sound like, "Oh, it's just so easy to do this." And also I had my dark days. Like, don't let me make it sound like everything was rosy. I still don't have eyebrows. I have them penciled in today. You can kind of see them a little bit, but I still don't have eyebrows. I barely have eyelashes. I do have things about myself. I have a lot of scars all over my body now that I didn't used to have before, but I wear them proudly. Um, I think that if you can find the things to celebrate, if you can find the positivity that you have, rather than focusing on the negative, because it's overwhelming how much how negative it can feel because you don't feel good, you have cancer, like there's just all of these sort of like negative messages that you're getting. But at the same time, like, do you have a roof over your head? Do you have a supportive partner or friend in your life? Can you get a hug from someone? And if you can find that gratitude, I just really feel like that is the thing that got me through. Find those things, even if it's the smallest thing. Like, I really like this pillow on my bed. It just is really comfortable, and I'm spending a lot of time in bed, and I'm really grateful for this pillow, or I'm really grateful for cold water because my I had a lot of mouth sores in chemo, and so like little things like that, like a cold glass of water made my mouth feel better. I'm really grateful for this. I'm not going to take it for granted. And I think that when you can see how abundant your life is, it's going to be a lot easier for you to stay positive. And everybody's diagnosis is a little bit different. Everyone's prognosis, how the outcome is going to be a little bit different. There's people that go through breast cancer that don't have to have chemo and maybe just have a lumpectomy. I did have to have a mastectomy on my right side. So like, again, a little bit different recoveries, different. You may or may not have your hair or lose your hair. I had lost most of mine, and it's starting to come back in a little bit though. But I think that the more you can find those things that are good, the things that you can be thankful for, the how blessed you actually are, I think that's where your truth is. That is what's going to get you through in those really, really dark times. And I think the other thing is just like, give yourself a lot of grace. If you feel bad and you feel bad that you feel bad, like it's okay. Like every day is going to be a little different, but assuming you can stick to whatever the plan is that you've come up with your oncologist and your treatment team, every day is a step closer to the end.
That is so beautiful, Christy. And thank you so much. And you're right. We have so much to be thankful for. And sometimes when we focus on that, that can truly help us through our journey.
Yep.
So, Christy, of course, we always say this, but I could talk to you like all day and all night. So, how can listeners just connect with you and, learn about you as an ADHD mompreneur?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the socials at the ADHD Mompreneur. It's just like entrepreneur, but you put mom at the beginning. And my website is the ADHD Mompreneur.
And of course, everybody watching and listening, I will have all of Christy's links in the show page notes. Christy, thank you so much again for taking time out of your schedule.
Janet, I'm already counting the days till we get to chat again.
Me too.